Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at theDove.us. Well, today we're delighted to talk to Pastor Bob Russell. Now, he's an interesting gentleman. He's pastored a church that ended up being one of the largest churches in America. He's authored several books, and he just got involved in now making a movie, and we're going to talk to him about that. But Bob, nice to have you, my friend. Good to see you.
Well, thank you, Perry. Good to be here.
You went from 120 to 18,000, and you lived through it.
Well, I was there at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky for 40 years. I started when I was 22 and stayed with the church. They just couldn't get rid of me, and I stayed with it for 40 years and retired when I was a little over 62.
Well, congratulations. And the work goes on. That's what a testament. How did you get into making the movie Acts of God?
Well, there's a production studio in Louisville, Kentucky called City on a Hill, and they had contracted with Trinity Broadcast Network to do a movie. They've done several films with them, but to do a film about why bad things happen to good people or how Christians should be able to withstand tragedy. And they then approached me and asked me if I would work with them on this project. And I was intrigued by the subject. I think it's needed. And so we began to work together and used as the basis of the study, the life of Joseph in the Bible. There's a full-length movie, which is about an hour and 45 minutes long, dealing with contemporary families that have issues. And then that movie is broken down into 6 segments for small group studies. And I am the teacher in the small group study on the life of Joseph. And often we use the life of Job to talk about suffering, but Joseph went through a series of tragedies as well. Then they asked me, they said, if you're going to do the small group study for this movie, there's a role for a preacher in the movie. Would you be willing to play the role of the preacher? And I said, look, I never have acted in my life. I didn't even act in high school. I don't know that I could do that. I don't want to be hokey. And I do want to stretch. I want to be used of God. But I will try it if you be sure to be honest with me about whether it works or not. And they said, oh, we'll be honest. And they said, all we want you to do is be yourself. Just be yourself. And they had a number of very professional actors and actresses, and I was a little bit intimidated. And I found out at first that being myself wasn't good enough. They said, well, let's try that again. But, eventually I got since it was the role of a preacher, and I had been in many of those situations, I actually liked it and enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations. The topic itself, Bob, is a touchy one. A lot of churches don't even go there.
Well, I think there's several reasons that churches are reluctant to talk about pain and suffering. One is that there's no easy answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, you even look at the book of Job, which is a book about suffering, and we see Job suffering, and then you look, what's God's answer for why he permitted Job to suffer? And the answer seems to be, you know what? I'm not going to give you the complete answer. You just got to trust, and you've got to wait for my will to be accomplished. And we preachers like to be able to wrap everything up in 30 minutes and give easy answers. And there are no easy answers to this question. And maybe one other reason that churches are reluctant to go there is that so many people hurt. Yeah. And it's almost like you're pulling back the scab again and rather than letting the wound heal. But I really think that we need to equip our people and our leaders especially to deal with this subject of why God permits so much pain in the world, because that's probably the number one reason that people doubt. And Christian people need to be reinforced, and they need to have an answer for the hope that's in them.
Would you agree it seems that Christians now are just on overload with a lot of pain and suffering, just in general?
It really seems that way, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised because, the Lord predicted in the last days there would be terrible times. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like we're inundated with a lot of tragedies and a lot of pain. In addition to that, persecution of Christians and ridicule of Christians is starting to step up. And that's one of the reasons that this movie, and then accompanying the movie, I've written a book called Acts of God, which Moody is publishing, and that's to be released, I think, the 1st of April. So we're hoping that the movie and the small group studies and the book will really be helpful to people about this subject.
Wow. The tagline, you got a little bit interesting twist to it. Sometimes God gives us more than we can handle. Explain that, expound on that a little bit.
There's a tagline that says, God doesn't give us more than we can handle alone.
Alone.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about God will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. And a lot of times Christian people will say to somebody who's hurting, well, remember that God won't let you, won't put more on you than you can bear. And that kind of gags somebody who's going through suffering. And, just like the promise of all things work together for good, he doesn't have that promise to everybody. It's to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. And the promise that God won't give you more than you can bear is the end of that verse is he will provide a way out, that you will be able to stand up underneath it. But we've got to be relying on God. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And we see people all the time who buckle under the weight of suffering. And maybe they turn to alcohol or to drugs or to suicide or just run away and try to escape. They need the Lord. And we need to have an awesome trust in God if we're going to go through some of the hard times that come.
Were you pleased with the outcome of the film?
I got to tell you, I was really pleased. I was apprehensive when I first read the script. Because it is so realistic and it is a very heavy film. It is not a film you're going to go in. It's not a comedy, and it's not a feel-good movie. When you feel good when you come out because there is a positive ending and an inspirational ending. But everybody who sees this film says, "Boy, that's a heavy film, but boy, it is realistic." Sometimes Christians are accused of not living in the real world and trying to escape reality. And this movie is not like that. And this movie is not hokey. It demonstrates that people have real problems. And just because you believe in the Lord does not mean that those problems are over in an instant. In this movie, there are 4 different families that are interwoven with each other, and they're all dealing with different problems. And they're not over in 30 minutes. But when I saw the end result of this movie, and the last 10 minutes just is really inspirational in that it's realistic, and yet it reminds us of the hope we have in God for eternal life through Christ. And so I was very pleased when it was finished.
Now, I understand this is going to turn into, or has turned into, a group study, a DVD series for small groups.
Yes, we advise that people see the movie first in its entirety. And then there are 6 segments of small group studies on acts of God. And the study will show a clip from the movie. And then I'm the teacher in the small group studies. And we're going to focus on the life of Joseph. You think of how Joseph, for 3 decades, went through problems with a dysfunctional family. His brothers brutalized him and threatened to kill him. And then he was a slave, and he did what was right, and he still was punished for doing the right thing and resisting the temptation of Potiphar's wife. And he gets thrown into jail, and he interprets the dream for the cupbearer, and he still is left in jail for 2 years. And he has one problem after another. But the end result was God blessed him at the end, and God used all that suffering to humble him and prepare him for being the prime minister of Egypt.
Wow. So, Bob, is there a sequel to this?
Well, we're wanting to get through this first one and see how it's responded, but we're really excited about it. People don't need, it's my observation in many years of ministry through difficult situations, that most people going through pain really don't need a theological explanation. They just need an emotional identification. People ask, why is God letting this happen to me? And there is no easy answer to that. But when they see somebody else went through it and they endured it, they've been through difficult times just like I'm going through difficult times, and they held on to their faith, and if they can do it, I can do it too. And I think that is one of the primary messages of the book, Acts of God, and of this movie, Acts of God.
All right, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you a question off topic just for a moment.
Sure.
Starting a church at 120, building it to 18,000, pastoring it for 40 years, how did you know in your heart it was time to walk away?
Well, I planned that in advance. And I had read a book called Too Great a Temptation by Joe Gregory, and it talked about how the transition at the First Baptist Church in Dallas had not gone well. And I said, that can't happen to Southeast Christian Church, because we've got to learn from that. And so I met with our elders, and we developed a 5-year transition plan. And we were blessed to have 2 guys on staff, younger guys, Dave Stone and Kyle Eidemann, who were coming up. They were ready to take over. And when I set that date 5 years in advance, and I got to July 1st, 2006, I had prayed about it and planned for it, and I was excited about actually stepping aside, knowing that I was turning the church over to some very capable hands. But you know what, Perry, when I stepped aside, I didn't quit just so I could play golf or fish or something.
Yeah, I don't find quit or retirement in the Bible.
No, I think we need to retire to something.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have another chapter in my life when my health was good and I still had the vitality to do it. And so I've spent a lot of time mentoring ministers and trying to have a ministry to church leaders. And I think this project, Acts of God, falls into that category.
So you mentored your successors.
Yes, we chose them 5 years in advance, and I let them preach more and more, and we talked about leadership, and we turned more and more things over to them. Yeah. And it was a transition that went really smoothly.
Wow, congratulations. All right, the movie's called Acts of God, and where can people begin to get a copy of this and see it?
If they would go on the website for City on a Hill in Louisville, Kentucky, that would pop up, or they could just go to bobrussell.org, and there's some reference material there about the movie as well. They could get a DVD. I was in a church in Greenwood, Mississippi last Sunday that showed the movie on Saturday night and on Sunday night again for their people, and I preached on the subject on Sunday morning, and the responses were really good. And that's one of the things that churches could do. Churches could get the DVD, show it to the entire church, and then there's a 6-week sermon series that's available. The preachers could preach. I've written 6 sermons on the life of Job that could get them started anyway.
Bob, you're a delight and an inspiration. Thank you, my friend. What an honor to have you today, and best to you. And let's stay in touch as you are used in the future in new stretching ways.
Well, thank you, Perry. It's good talking to you. God bless you.